Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Cleveland, and I'm a biologist in the north. I work in both the Skeena and the Nass. I have a presentation here that will fire up and hope I don't put people to sleep after lunch. I have lots of nice photos of people interested. Yeah, so one of the main okay. Sure. So one of the main tasks, I work for the Kitwanga Fisheries Authority, which is a First Nation organization in the north. They have traditional territories in the Skeena and the Nass watershed. We do a lot of different things, but one of the things that we focused in on is trying to rebuild an important stock that the Kitwanga have held dear for centuries. So yeah, let's jump right into it. I've been working on the rebuilding Kitwanga Sockeye for almost 20 years. One of the first things when I was a young person right out of university, the chiefs sat me down and they said, first thing we want you to do is figure out why we have no more sockeye. And being eager and naive, I said, oh, what can that be? Sure, let's do it. And 20 years later, we're still scratching our head, but I'll go through it here. So the Kitwanga watershed is a tributary of the Skeena River. It's located 250 kilometers from the ocean, main stem length of 61 kilometers, and a drainage area of 83,000 hectares. So it's a fairly small watershed in the Skeena compared to others, but very biologically rich. It supports all 5 species of Pacific salmon and steelhead and resident populations of salmonids. And it only has one lake, Kitwanga Lake, which is 29 kilometers upriver. So this is the, you can see the Kitwanga River, the lake, and then it drains into the Skeena. So Kitwanga Sockeye originate from Kitwanga Lake, one of the 10 larger wild sockeye producing lakes in the Skeena watershed. Genetically unique, considered a conservation unit in Canada's wild salmon policy. Traditionally, the stock provided an important Section 35 fishery for Kitwanga and other First Nation people that inhabited the Skeena watershed. A little bit of more background. Historically, there's not a lot of historical records, like in many salmon populations, but it was thought that they numbered in the tens of thousands annually. Studies performed by DFO, Ken Shortstreet at the time in the late 90s showed that Kitwanga Lake was very productive, had some of the highest Daphnia concentrations in PR, photosynthetic rate in all of BC. We kind of, the chiefs got together, they talked to DFO and said, hey, there's no sockeye coming back to this creek. What do we do about it? So one of the first things I did is we applied for funding and got funding to set up a temporary fence just below the lake. So we knew, based on traditional knowledge, that all of the sockeye home to the lake, and they spawn right below the lake in the river historically, and then all along the western lakeshore, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But it was alarming. The first 3 years of data showed there were literally a few hundred fish left. So obviously a big problem. People were worried about losing genetic diversity, and we went into conservation mode. Just a little bit more to kind of put towards, how many fish there were likely historically. So based on the traditional knowledge, the Kitwanga village was located on the banks of the Kitwanga River, just below the lake. They had traditional weirs. Here's a photo from 1918 from one of the fisheries inspector, and Pritchard, another fisheries inspector in 1948, talked about it was not uncommon to see hundreds of families lined up along the river harvesting fish. They also sold it in barter. 1904, another report from a fisheries inspector. This is one of my favorite photos. It was taken in 1960, so it's an aerial photo of the village. You can see the river on the left, or in the middle of the photo. You can see totem poles and then a carving shed. But if you look all around the totem poles, it looks like Swiss cheese, or bombs have been dropped there. And these are actually caches where the First Nations used to bury their sockeye salmon and keep it for the winter. So more evidence that, it was a big fishery at the time. So I talked about, one of the first things we did was we had a workshop. We collected a bunch of their traditional ecological knowledge from the elders and the oral histories, and it showed that historically the lakeshore on the west side used to turn red with spawners, so the sockeye would spawn all along the western lakeshore and at the outlet of the river. We did radio tracking initially, and then followed it up with annual visual observations. And since 2000, we've only found sockeye spawning on the lake shores of the Narrows. That's where the red circles are. Most of the other areas are where you see historical spawning are covered in macrophytes and sediment. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So we sat down with DFO, we looked at the various perimeters that could be affecting the sockeye production in the watershed. One of the first things we did is we worked with Prince Rupert folks, and we did a long-term fishery reconstruction and found that over-exploitation of Kitwanga sockeye was likely a major contributing factor to the decline. We've seen, unfortunately, Kitwanga sockeye, the run timing overlaps almost perfectly with the bulk of the enhanced mean sockeye. So it's seen very high exploitation rates over a long period, as high as in the 70s in some years. So for a small stock that wasn't monitored, it doesn't have ideal gravels that are clean on semi-annual or every 3 or 4 years like we were seeing at Babine, it couldn't take these higher exploitation rates. That's part of the theory. Also, if you look at the map on the right, you can see all these red shapes. This is logging clear cuts. So clear cuts that have basically been created between 1960 and 2000, and it's believed that many of the lakeshore areas have been excessive sedimentation and then changed water flow patterns, increased macrophyte growth, which were evident to us when we first started looking at the situation. So then we collected all the data we had. We worked with DFO and the Skeena Fisheries Commission, which is a larger First Nations organization in the watershed, and we produced a recovery plan. And then with the recovery plan, we identified 4 goals. One is to determine adult escapement and smoke production on an annual basis, reduce fishing exploitation rates annually, starting then, maintain and restore critical spawning habitats, and implement strategic enhancement. So fry out planting in years of extremely low abundance. So luckily we were able to secure funding to set up long-term monitoring programs. We have, as of 2008, we have a $500,000 smoke fence that we run annually. It's done in conjunction with the Cote d'Ivoire Tag Program for Coho. We also, since 2003, have a $1 million fish fence at the mouth of the river where we monitor sockeye returns annually. But we also, there's other spin-off benefits that have allowed us to secure that money, and $125,000 a year that it costs to run. We collect all 5 species of escapement data at the adult fence. So it's used in season and post-season to manage fisheries in the middle of the Skeena watershed. Yeah, so moving on, I'm going to talk specifically about 2 projects that we worked on to try and restore spawning areas, and then a hatchery program. So we developed plans with DFO, 3 treatments at known spawning locations, and the goal was to increase egg to fry survival. We did hydraulic cleaning of spawning beds to remove excess fine sediment, and over 2 years we cleaned a total of 56 square meters. Creation of spawning platforms by adding superior gravel, and we over the 2 years 223 square meters, and then hydraulic cleaning and the addition of gravels. And the idea here is we wanted to see what the sockeye spawners prefer, and also what produced the highest egg to fry survivals. So we designed studies around that. So first off is we dove, we set up grids for our work area, we had control areas, and then three of the treatment sites. just continuing, so how do we actually do the cleaning? I'm going to talk about the cleaning first, is we built these floating platforms, and we had a culvert, and in our gridded area, we took a 3-inch pump with a 10-inch tube, and we actually churned the gravel, so we blew high-pressure water through the 10-foot aluminum tube, suspended the sediment inside of the culvert, and then had a 4-inch trash pump where we would pump all the sediment out of our contained area. And then the sediment and the dirty water was pumped 200 feet up into the forest floor. Regularly, we took samples of the sediment that we were pumping out of the contained area, and then brought it back to the lab, and then did various tests. I'm not going to go into the tests, but I have that information if people are interested. But on average, we were pulling out 200 kilograms, 200 kilograms per square meter of fine sediment out of those areas that we cleaned. And yeah, you can see the range between 80 and 440 kilograms. So this is down to a depth between 30 and 40 centimeters. So moving on, I'll talk about the assessment afterwards, but we also created superior spawning gravels. So we worked with DFO, we identified what gravel mixtures we would like. These were the end grade limits that we used, and it was quite similar to what they used at the Fulton Pinkett spawning channels. And what we did is we modified a herring punt. We built a deck with Teflon, and then loaded gravel onto the boat, brought them to the sites, and then deposited them in our test areas. So then as a follow-up, we did assessments. So visual estimates of where fish preferred to spawn. So we found that the adult preferred the clear preference for new gravels. So, and they didn't prefer the cleaned areas, oddly enough. The egg tube, we designed an egg tube study over 3 years, and then monitored at all the 3 treatment sites, including a control in the same area. So in total, we had 208 egg tubes. So an egg tube consisted of, you can see what they look like in the far left photo, but basically 100 fertilized sockeye eggs in the tube, and they were contained in the tube and buried in the gravel, roughly 30 centimeters in depth. And then after the fry would hatch, so they were fertilized eggs, after they would hatch, the fry were able to swim through the perforations in the egg tube. And we would dig them up the following spring or early summer, and we could actually count how many dead eggs were left in each tube. Yeah, so the results, the treated and non-treated sites showed similar egg to fry survival. So there was no statistical difference between all 4 sites. And overall, we had really high survival rate, 78% overall. So moving on, I'll talk about our strategic enhancement. So as I indicated, we basically took this on in 2 years, over a 2-year period. Our initial goal was to raise 200,000 fry annually, or 100,000 fry for 2 years, so 200,000 fry. But then in the second year, we had an extremely low return of only 240 adults. And that forced us to have a smaller take the following year. The fish came in 2s and 3s, and it caused a whole bunch of logistical problems. Nevertheless, we successfully collected and released 110,000 fry over the period. So we collected brood stock a number of ways. Most of the brood stock was collected at our adult fence, which was located at the bottom of the river. And then we held fish for up to 4 months before they were sexually ripe, so we could collect the brood stock, which was very challenging. We held them in lake net pens, so you can see the third photo over is a cylindrical shaped net pen, and we would hold them in the lake at that depth for up to 3 months. We checked them weekly. We also held adults at the hatchery itself, in smolt raceways. The water was quite a bit colder there, so they actually matured quite a bit slower, but it's okay. And yeah, so we applied the Alaskan Sockeye Culture Protocol. We tested for IHN, BKD. We also used various other techniques, Vitalife, Aquacom, Oxyvet, Parasite, S, and hatchery production success monitor for egg to adult stage for the next 4 years. Yeah, so the results, many fry left the lake shortly after release, which was a really big surprise to us. We had an IPT with very big wings set up, and we were catching fry within 24 hours of them being released 8 kilometers up in the middle of the lake. After that, we implemented net ped holding, and we would hold them for up to 3 weeks, and that seemed to keep them in the lake. Our hatchery smolts were 2 times the size of wild smolts when they went out. And that's likely because they were released at they're different sizes than the wild. We couldn't correspond perfectly because we had no way of warming the hatchery water at the hatchery that we were using. Returning adults, when they did come back though, even these larger smolts, they were the same size as the regular adults. They returned in the same age ratios as our wild, and overall we had a 0.43% survival rate on the fish from fry to the adult stage. And the hatchery recruit responder 8 to 10 times replacement. So both programs were discontinued after 2 years. So why? Because we found that actually we're producing fairly good egg to fry survivals with what we had there. And at the time, in 2008, we developed and constructed this large smolt fence, and we were getting 120 smolts per female quite consistently, which was telling us the lake wasn't sick after all. It was something that's happening on the outside. So we kind of stepped back and we focused only on the monitoring. More recently though, we've been having a lower production of smolts, and then in the last 3 years, we've averaged over 22 smolts per female, which has made us rethink things, and we've been working with Dan and Selby to try and figure out what's going on. We implemented winter and summer dissolved oxygen monitoring programs, so on. Yeah, and just as a side note, through our adult program, we've been able to monitor sockeye production for 14 years, and you can see that it's been fairly stable over the long term with a little bit of growth and 2 really good years. So two of the 14 years we've had, or we could have had 20-some thousand fish back. So that's it.